Good morning, everybody. Really appreciate y'all coming out today for this Pioneering a Culture of Innovation and Positive Changes for All Levels of the Workforce panel. My name is Jacob Calhoun. I am the Director of Transit System Enablement for CapMetro. That's the local transit agency here, and my specialization is really in kind of long-range planning and project development, which can't really build a lot of big things unless you have the right people with the right skills in order to make that happen. So for this panel, I'm going to go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves, and we've got a couple of different questions. So Sumesh, why don't you go
Hey,
first?
yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sumesh Arora. I want to thank Bill Walls for having me here to talk about innovation this morning. I work for a utility company, so a little bit odd one out, not directly in the construction company, but a lot of what we are doing really has direct tie-ins to construction. I've been with Entergy, which is a company we serve 4 states in the Southeast, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. A Fortune 500 company headquartered out of New Orleans. And I've been there about 2.5 years in what's called the Diversity and Workforce Strategies Department. So my role really is to help develop the next generation talent, and really we're bringing in aspects of innovation to really help the next gen kind of really understand what what this industry. It's not your grandfather's utility anymore, right? Or great grandfather's utility anymore, for that matter. So we're trying to bring that aspect into it. But in my previous lifetime, I've done a lot of work with innovation. I teach as a faculty at a university also on entrepreneurship and technology-based economic development. So I'll stop here and let the rest of the folks introduce.
Thank you. My name is Nancy Michelli, and I'm an executive coach helping to engineer better communications every day. And if you've ever experienced a miscommunication where you give somebody a piece of information and then they do something completely different, those are the types of things that I help do, as well as at times we can get frustrated or emotional in our jobs and our workplaces. And that can show up as things like crusading or over communicating or getting very emotional and self-deprecating. And there are more different patterns that happen. But when this happens, we reduce the communication between people. And when that happens, it impacts the success of our projects, it impacts the success of our safety, and it impacts the success of our relationships, trust, and culture in our organizations. And so my goal, having spent 25 years as an engineer in the oil and gas industry and working turnarounds with engineers in construction, is to help engineers learn how to communicate better with everybody in the organization so that we can be more successful as a whole.
Great, thanks. Hi, my name's Calvin. I'm the co-founder, CEO of CrewScope. We empower construction crews to be more productive. So we solve the problem that construction crews are being held back in the field, and they're being held back by a number of reasons, but mostly that they need more information to connect their work with purpose. And they can be much more productive. And so we help them do that by setting short-term goals with them, so a very collaborative planning process. We communicate instantly with the crews, so providing a lot of progress feedback, which helps them to think about what winning looks like and develop that emotional connection to winning. We make winning fun. I mean, when we talk to crews, we ask them, why are you here? It's dirty, it's dangerous, it's early. And the most common answer we get is, it's really fun to win together as a team. And I think we've forgotten a lot about that construction really is fun. We're building really important things. They're also really cool. The equipment is really fun if you're into that. And we try to bring that out to life with our app. And finally, we get all this really great data about how crews are performing, and we help them rise up. I think we heard some comments at the last panel around how bonuses and incentives really grab attention. And so we gamify that recognition through our app, and we've seen some great results, and we're really focused on building something that workers love, and we've been having a lot of fun doing it. Thanks.
Thanks, Calvin. My name is Chris Young. The sign says I'm Director of Workforce Development. I was until Friday, but don't worry, I didn't get fired. I took my boss's job, so I'm the Director of Human Resources for the Texas Department of Transportation. We're 13,175 people as of last Friday, so that's probably changed since then. And in case y'all haven't noticed, we're here in Texas, so we expect you to drive friendly. It's certainly what we're trying to go for, and that's deliberate. we made a choice as an organization to stop being so NHTSA, highway safety, click it or ticket, punitive, and instead embrace, the motto of Tejas, which is we're not the Lone Star State, we're the friendly state. So we want everybody to embrace that so we can all get home safely. When it comes to our organization, we recognize the same thing as y'all do. Everybody's under more stress than ever before. We're doing more with less resources, but I think that's all pablum because you could have said that in 300 BCE and then 200 BCE and then today, and we'll say 200 years from now, everything's volatile, uncertain, ambiguous. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we all get that. But, how are we going to get to that next level? So our focus is really on empowering our employees, understanding that we just got $121 billion for the next 10 years to build our transportation system here in Texas, and not the same number of employees that matches that scale of construction. So happy to be here. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you. Of course. So listening to kind of the conversation of the panel beforehand, looking through some of the questions we kind of talked about, I'm going to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off on this one because in these industries that are risk averse and capital intensive and highly regulated, how can leaders rethink the risk without jeopardizing the innovation and the culture of the organization?
I'll maybe put a little bit of historical perspective on it to start with, and you talk about maybe thousands of years ago. Working still? Not sure if it is, but that's okay. Can y'all hear me still? I'm from Mississippi, so I still say y'all.
Oh, now you got it.
All right. There's a scare of Mississippi there, right? But now, so a lot of my research actually was on diffusion and adoption of innovations. And interestingly enough, a lot of you, I'm sure, have seen the curve, the adopter curve, right? You got the innovators that are maybe about 2.5% of the population. You got the very early adopters that maybe another 12, 13% of the population. But you got laggards in the end, that's 16%. So those individuals are probably, at least in the near term, might as well say never going to get on the bandwagon that you're trying to get them to get, right? So, but the point I was going to make is some of that research was actually done. The original book was published in the 60s. And the research for that book really was drawn upon from the 1930s and how hybrid corn was actually introduced to farmers in Iowa, right? So the point is that human culture, right, is pretty much staying the same. So we can put different labels on it. 200 years ago, we probably weren't even using the word innovation, right? But we're still looking at ways of doing different things in a more creative manner. So it's really about looking at the culture, and we talk a lot about cultural safety, but it's really about people, right? It's about how do you really encourage that original 2.5% who are probably coming up with those crazy ideas in your company. How do you celebrate them to make sure that they are not really disrespected or shunned by the rest of the company and for bringing up those crazy ideas? And then there's another kind of group of people, maybe another 10% or so, who then are going to be the ones your guinea pigs, right? It's your innovators are not necessarily even your guinea pigs. They're the ones behind. They're the ones who really need some guinea pigs to try out their crazy ideas. So once you kind of get past that first 10 to 15% of your employees, beyond that is when you kind of start taking some adoption, right? Then you start actually looking at people who are really starting to pull this in, and then it's actually started to come into the meetings, and the discussions start to take place. So it can be actually become innovation as crazy and creative as it sounds. It can actually be a very methodical process to be able to get that. So, when you talk about risk averse, so that's where you can mesh in the culture of risk averseness, where with some kind of a methodology that you're trying to actually put innovation into it. And I can, talk about some examples later on, but let me stop here.
I'll take a stab at this one. So at one point in my career, I was hired due to the death of an operator and asked to develop process safety in the oil and gas industry. And it caused me to sit back quite a bit and really think about what happens and how do we improve that culture and that safety and innovation so that people walk away alive every day. And one of the things that I have noticed, and this is part of the reason why I went back to understanding communication and miscommunication, is that when we limit people and people are afraid, when they are frustrated, they won't go to resolve things. They won't show up with the good solutions or the ways to do things. And there are so many things that we have within our companies that cause people frustration in their day-to-day activities that lead to some of the bigger risks that we see than just um, than trying to create like the latest iPad or the latest new solution. A lot of the innovation that we need in our companies is the small things that reduce everyday frustration.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, our approach is exactly aligned. It's to like meet people where they are in the field. We're not trying to revolutionize the way that they're already doing their work. So what I mean by this is very practical. For example, we know that planning is good for all of us, but especially in construction, and they do it. They plan, but they plan on paper or the side of a blueprint, or they're planning just for the next hour, for the next day. And so our approach to innovation in this risk-averse segment is to encourage them to plan for the week. I don't mean that to sound trivial at all, because it's really, really tough to do. And again, people are doing this, but they're doing it in really analog and manual ways. So how can we support what they're already doing well with technology that is really, really practical and purpose built for the function and feels really natural to what they're already doing? And then we need to show them a 10x improvement so that they would do something new. So what do I mean by that? Well, today a 7 a.m. toolbox talk in the morning or the morning briefing is generally where you get your information for the day. That's where you hear about how your how your project is progressing. But if you've ever been to one of these 7 a.m. toolbox talks, it's really hard to hear. I've been 10 feet away from the site leader, and I can't hear a word he's saying. And so, so we approach this by using the tools that they already have. Like everyone has a smartphone, or for sure they can receive an SMS at the very least, for the one or two that don't have a smartphone. So we can communicate instantly with them. And again, we're meeting them where they are. We're not asking them to download new apps or remember new passwords, because they don't like to do that. But they live their lives already today on SMS. So we meet them where they are. And so we're able to take a lot of these best practices in leadership, right? Like planning, communication, recognition, things that we already know and do. But then how do you bring that to life in a construction site with hourly field workers that, remember, are there because they don't like working on computers. They took these roles because they love working with their hands and they love building things. So the technology there has to not get in the way and has to fit naturally to what they're already doing.
Yeah, I'll just round that out by I think everybody tells their crews eventually that the slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so we make sure that they do the little things right. They put on as simple as putting on the boots right, putting the right socks for the right temperature, and building that confidence with those slow little measures before we get into big things. I think there's a tendency for us to look at these things from a dashboard level view, a computer level view, equate innovation with technology. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, a better shovel design, a better sign holder, that all counts and it makes your job easier. So really going back, building up those confidence measures so that people are less risk averse and they're willing to speak up and to change the job site. Even as simple as repositioning the porta-johns, or, hey, I know we don't have anybody that needs ADA capabilities on this job site. However, those big ADA porta-johns are so much more comfortable if you've got all your gear inside that box. Wouldn't it make our lives just a little bit better if we had the bigger porta-johns? Why not? And encouraging people to make those small changes so we can make bigger changes in the future.
Excellent point. So how can the industry provide that kind of incentive-based performance outcomes and kind of create that space where people can think outside the box and they can have fun doing it?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, we think a lot about incentives at CrewScope. So we gamify. So we plan weekly targets. We set those targets to the critical path, and when the crews hit those targets, they can earn rewards. So incentives are powerful, and from our experience, at the very ground level, so starting with the hourly workers, it's the gamification of this incentive that's really driving it. Like, we're not talking about life-changing money, but it's the recognition of first of all, what does a good job look like? And we're paying attention to that. And now we're going to start to measure it. And when we hit those targets, we've created value for the project. So it's the act of recognition that's really, really driving the behaviors. But we're also working with the developers, and there's crazy money on the table here. So for example, some of our clients are spending $50,000 a day just in interest charges. So for them, any time saved on the schedule is tremendous, but they lack the mechanisms of driving that value down to the people that are actually doing the work. Like, they're going through construction managers and trades. And so what we've seen is we're starting to see an evolution of these incentives in contracts. The performance incentives have existed, but they're typically captured by the owner of the contractor, and there's no way of really driving it down to the people that do the work. So I think that's one opportunity for innovation that we're leading. But we're also seeing on the other side liquidated damages, and this is a lot more of the stick that exists in these contracts. Again, the trouble is that the people that bear the cost, so we're talking about the owners, the asset owners, the people that bear the cost of these liquidated damages often don't have a mechanism to really influence the schedule. And so the opportunity here is to both build in contractually these, performance incentives and perhaps liquidated damages. But then the mechanism is to get it down to the site to actually get people thinking and acting that can adjust the schedule and realize these savings. But then, of course, we have to share that with the people that are doing the work. And a real example is some of these contractors that we speak to, the owners of the contractors. For them to make an extra $1 million or $10 million sometimes doesn't move the needle for them. It's actually too much headache, or they don't need it, or and I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. But when you talk to the workers, like the people that are actually building this stuff, we're paying relatively little. We're talking about 50 cents to $1 per hour in terms of these incentives. So minimal rewards. But the point is that when you connect them to the project and you show them how their individual effort creates value for the project, they are going to go over the moon and really show you how much opportunity there is to be more productive. But here, I'll pause there.
I'm gonna jump in on this one because I believe that when we give people space to think innovatively as part of our culture, we have an opportunity to help teams of people come up with really amazing ideas. And so one of the things, and you can see this in companies like 3M, they do the 15%, which means 50% of the time that that employee they get to spend on their pet project doing innovation. Years ago, when I worked in the turnaround industry, I didn't actually know what I was doing. I was new to the role. I had no idea. And so one of the things I recognized was I needed to trust my construction contractors significantly. And so I created a couple workshops over the year where we came together, we team built, we brainstormed ideas. And because of that, they were able to save $9 million in 9 months. And it wasn't because of what I knew that they needed to do. It was me asking and listening and giving them space and opportunity to connect with each other, to provide ideas and suggestions. And we see it more in the tech industry. Google does this. FedEx does this with their teams on how to improve shipping. And I have personally done it in the construction turnaround industry. And I know it works when we give that space to allow people to have those conversations and do just exactly what Southwest told me on this napkin, which is the best ideas are born on napkins. And just allow people to come together and have that space to scratch out ideas, to brainstorm ideas, and create that as a cultural norm in your organization.
And if I may quickly add on the incentive piece, right? So our company has what's called impact awards, and they can be given by supervisors to employees at any time. But what I did not realize that my supervisor could give that impact award to even other people in the company who are not directly reporting to her, but I have been working with on some creative projects. And that was really kind of a unique that I thought was that my supervisor could go out 3 departments out, right? Even to some of the frontline workers on some of the projects that we did. One example that I'll show you, last year we had a conference in Washington, D.C., and we were the only company there with this giant tractor trailer. That's a line worker trailer, that one that they take out to the rodeos, the lineman rodeos. So we were actually able to set that trailer up there. I mean, we had a great impact. And then on top of that, they cooked jambalaya for all the attendees that were there, right in front of the Hilton, right by the Spy Museum. So it was kind of the talk of the whole show, right? So it really created a lot of buzz about our company and the culture that we were promoting out there. So my boss was actually able to give the impact awards to those individuals, to the line workers and the crew that came up there with that, which I didn't think she could even go out that far. But it really is about incentivizing, right? But it's about rewarding the innovative behavior. They didn't have to bring that trailer up there, right? We worked with them, twisted their arms a little bit, but they were really nice, and we had to kind of go around some hotel rules and got some exceptions done and all that. So it took a lot of doing to get it up there. But it was really a team effort, and then to become back able to provide that incentive again, small amounts, right? Nothing huge, but still meaningful amounts.
So how can an organizations and integrate this innovation into change management strategies that kind of last for the long term and aren't just kind of one-off type things? Chris, I don't know if you want to take that one.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on. We see that a lot in our industries and in our sectors. Great ideas from the office, from the guys and gals in the white pressed shirts, and then most of the foremen, most of the superintendents understand that, yeah, we just have to put up with this for a couple of weeks and it'll slowly disappear. And so everybody says, yes, yes, we'll do it, Roger. And they do it a couple of times and then it doesn't stick. So for us, it is always demonstrating the value for the employee. So we always have to start it off with the what's in it for me. The same thing that we do in training is like, why am I here? Why am I wasting my time with this? And if we can show them right up front, do you want to go home at 7 tonight or at 4:30? That's it. That's the only question I got for you. And of course, everybody's going to say, oh, I want to go home at 4:30. And it's great. Let me show you how to do that. And then if you get that immediate buy-in, or do you want to do this so you do not have to worry so much the next time you do your 360 around this equipment because you cannot see underneath the hood here when you get up in the cab. It's like, what if I could make you feel better knowing that you lost somebody on your crew 3 years ago and that is still haunting your district? What if I could show you something that would make you feel safer when you stepped into the cab and buckled in? And then it makes it very personal and it shows the what's in it for me. If we do not articulate that, we cannot expect change to stick.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, do you want to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. So for me, change happens, and we're often told that change is a really slow process. It's slow, it's hard to get people to adopt, those types of things. But one of the things that I find is if you can look at change like an airplane taking off, where you need to put a lot of effort and a lot of energy into that first bit, and you want to do it in a more rapid pace, you can actually start to build buy-in. And then you've got to make it a cultural norm. Because if it's just something that you say, oh, this idea came from one of our team members and we've implemented and then drop it off, then people start to lose trust that you're going to actually continue with innovation and those things. But if you can rapidly take somebody's idea, somebody that comes from the field, somebody who's got some really interesting insight that has caused a lot of frustration with team members, they will be more interested in like, how quick can we get this? And then how willing as a leadership team and as an organization, are you willing to stick with that change and keep it there for us?
And and this may be somewhat kind of counterintuitive. Innovation that sticks is often actually easier to adopt, right? It's simpler. So the more complicated the innovation is, the harder actually it'll be, and the longer time it'll take to adopt it, for it to be diffused into the, whatever population that you're trying to introduce it to. So oftentimes you think that, innovation has to be this radical idea that's out there and it's going to change the way we do our business. Well, yes, it may eventually, but boy, getting there can really take you it may even cost you your entire business, and you may never actually get there. So you really have to think about, okay, how will it stick with the people, right? How easy is it to implement? And we take a simple form, right? You may think it's a simple form, and I think I like the example that you had. That 3 questions on the survey, right? Can we do it better? What do you like about it? What you didn't like about it, right? But I've seen conference surveys that are 10 forms. Like, I'm not sitting there doing this thing, right? So it is about how simple can you make the innovation that really is easy for people to adopt. And there is this notion of what they call incremental innovation and versus radical innovation. So, even incremental steps out there can get you to where you really want to get to.
Yeah, to build on that, for us, it's about building trust in the field. So we're working with superintendents and foremen and hourly skilled workers. And when we show up, what they're expecting, what they've seen their entire careers is that someone from the office only shows up to tell them to work harder, to work faster, and that they're doing it all wrong. Or they're there to like write them up for an infraction or a violation. So I mean, so this is what they're programmed for. They're also accustomed to the engineers or the designers in the office giving them schedules that often bear little resemblance to reality and to what they're experiencing on the ground. So very this top down and pushing onto them what they should do. And again, our approach to innovation is to be very gradual, and we want to build trust. And so what we're here is saying is, we want to encourage you to share your expertise, and we want you to own your own targets. We're not going to tell you what those are. So a lot of what we do here is very slow. So we are onboarding, for example, we might spend a couple of hours across 2 or 3 different sessions with the site team, just introducing our program, getting them comfortable with it, letting them react to it. Oftentimes they'll, like you said, smile and nod and say, okay, Roger. But it's, when we show up the second and the third time and we actually get them talking about how they're feeling, we show them how it's working and we demystify it. That's when we start getting an opening. But then even when we start setting targets in the field, a lot of what we do is trying to get the office to stay away, actually, is like, don't get involved here. Is like, we need your big picture targets, but otherwise, what you want is for the site team to start trusting that this is a process that's really for their benefit. And to do that, you really need to get out of their way and let them bring their expertise of what they think is good. And I know that we've been talking about incentives just before this, and incentives can be powerful, but you also be very careful with those too. Like, you don't want to push them too hard. I mean, we've seen some people in the office like put big money and think, oh, we're all going to get promotions, and then the field is just like, this is ridiculous. So actually, we recommend that you start very, very, very easy, just very mild incentives, and you get the site team to start really feeling like this is for their benefit. We're getting good results. The crew really seems to love it. And that's when you can start leading on the program, but it takes a number of months to build that habit.
Yeah, and kind of to that point, like we talked about the journey of kind of instilling that culture and making it happen. What are some short-term actionable strategies that people in this industry can put forward to kind of help implement that culture of change and innovation?
I think the message is important about innovation, but the messenger is equally important, right? I think we mentioned that there's the safety one also, right? Now, instead of coming from HR, it's actually coming from an individual that you're trying to reach out to them and try to help them become more safe. So it's really important to really be deliberate about figuring out who is actually going to convey that message that we're going to make these changes, excuse me, about innovation, right? And we may not even call that, hey, we're going to innovate towards something new. We're going to kind of gradually ease that into it, but be really deliberate about picking the messenger, right individual who you think really actually will connect to the audience, who's actually will be impacted by that innovation. So I think it's important to think about the message and the messenger.
So for me, I think innovation lasts better when it comes from the workers who actually have to do the work. Because if it comes from a top-down approach, then people are like, it's just another thing that I have to do. Where if you go and and listen to the workers and give them space on a regular basis to share ideas, to share improvements, and then take that improvement and implement it and give recognition to that person the way they want recognition. So not everybody wants a financial incentive. Not everybody wants, they may want the pet insurance instead, right? But not everybody wants to be put up front on the screen and said, this is my incentive. But what people want to know is that you're actually listening to them, and that when they share an opportunity to improve your company, that somebody's going to actually help them do that. And when you do, you start to build more trust. And that person will then say, hey, you know what? I gave this idea in and they actually implemented it. Because often in the construction world, often in the operators, maintenance type world, is their trust comes from hearing their other coworkers say that this actually happened to me, as opposed to their trust coming from leadership saying, I did it.
Yeah, I'll jump in here and what we can talk about here in a conference room and what we can do in a project plan and a project charter. I think we should deliberately have organizational change management projects when it comes to this kind of stuff. We should do that in a room, figure it out with the executives, key stakeholders, who the champions are for innovation. And then we should hide that from everybody else in the organization, because that is nerdy academic stuff. No one ever understands what OCM is until you explain that it's organizational change management, and that is only of interest to practitioners like us. No one else cares. So even as simple as stop saying innovation, that is too many syllables. I don't even know how that translates in Spanish, but buena idea is pretty easy to get out of there. And that's something that's more accessible to our workforce. And that has to be part of our communication strategy, which is part of the organizational change management plan, which the executives can care about, but no one else will care about. So let's keep it simple.
Well, and you know, like safety, right? Innovation is not an endpoint. It really is a journey, right? So you're on this journey of trying to continuously make those improvements, get to a better place, and you're trying to bring your employees with you, right? So way back, I did a lot of work with poultry farmers in another lifetime, and I had to figure out, and you talk about the messenger, right? So I had to really figure out how to be able to connect with these poultry farmers that I was going to try to introduce actually a very new technology, anaerobic digestion. There are still, I think there's only maybe still one poultry litter anaerobic digester in the country. And I'm trying to get that out there, right? So my first task was, okay, I think you all probably know about Jeff Foxworthy, the comedian. And he's got this list of things about, hey, you just might be a redneck. And guess what? I've been in Mississippi 30 plus years. There's a couple of things that I can check the box if I do qualify as a redneck. So forget this PhD stuff, but here I am, right? As your everyday local Mississippi redneck, right? So so that got a chuckle, right, from the room. And okay, I'm set, right? I can get my message across to them. They'll listen to me. So it is really important about connecting with your audience.
Yeah, you talked about connecting, right? And referrals and we do the same. Like we start with small groups in the field because we know that whenever nobody wants to hear from me because they know I'm trying to sell them something, but they want to hear from the foreman and from the trade who had firsthand experience, and they want to hear about what it was like for them. And so that's how we do it. We start with a small group of really passionate, motivated people. We help them to be very successful, and then they talk to their friends organically, and other crews see them and they see what's happening, and word spreads quite quickly. And so the trick here isn't to like push it or to oversell it. It's to really just show value and like really show people that you care and build trust with them, and then let them speak for themselves in their own words.
All right, I realize I'm the last thing stopping everyone from a break. So any questions for the panel or anything? Totally fine. Oh, back there in the back.
Yeah, hi, it's Bob Beldocki with On3. Innovation is one of those things in my past experience that when you use it as an organization, it intimidates people and they think it has to be cutting edge technology or something of that nature. I think the more powerful way to approach this is just have a culture where you're constantly trying to improve. And if you really do kind of table this idea where you're intimidating people with the concept of innovation, and you just know that you're constantly trying to get better, that in itself will take a culture to the point where you're actually making things happen versus intimidating people into this thing you can't sustain, which is all these innovation labs, et cetera. So I just really recommend that people really look for positive progress, and from the field is really where it actually happens. And so if you can actually make the progress from the suggestions from the field and actually embrace, then you're going to have that culture that you actually want, that people want to kind of step forward and bring their ideas to the table, et cetera, versus intimidating with this idea that innovation has to be this great technical kind of fiend thing, kind of whatever. So
I got one down here. Less wires to jump over this time.
Yeah, Gabe Guetta. Chris, you sparked the thought in my head, but Nancy, I think you touched on it as well, and you're all kind of speaking to it. There's an issue with creating echo chambers, in my opinion, especially at a management level. I mean, we're doing it kind of here. I mean, how many trade workers are actually here with us right now? Or craft workers. How do you disrupt that echo chamber from creating? How do you solve that problem? You guys talked a little bit about it, but how do you actually do it? What are there processes you have in place to disrupt that?
Yeah, I'm kind of known as a smart aleck in the organization, and I've only been there for 10 years, which is not much in the transportation industry. And so it's having trusted partners at the management and executive level who can come into a room and say, so for lack of a better word, and this is literally the academic definition, you can come in and say, this is bullshit. This is wasting everyone's time. We need to stop doing this. And our executives are already familiar with this when they say, okay, we need to cut bottom 10%, or we need to come up with the list of things to stop doing. That's when somebody should speak up and say, hey, look, this innovation has been stalled for the last 3 years. We need to stop throwing good money after bad. This magical tablet thing that we're trying to use in all the equipment, it is not working out. Stop it. Just stop it today. And if you don't have somebody who can come in there and be the devil's advocate, and that's a real role in a lot of public organizations, is to have the 13th man or the 13th woman or the devil's advocate to argue against all the yes men in the room. You need to have that role. If you're spending money, wasting money on innovations, having a devil's advocate in a room, that's a real discipline in academia we see all the time.
One last thing to
Yeah.
follow on that. You mentioned that it's common that an initiative will get rolled out, the field management or somebody in the field will say, yeah, we're in, and because they know it's going to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like, and I actually don't know the answer to this, is it effective to bring those individuals into the decision-making process earlier, or is it counterproductive to the process? Like bring them in to disrupt the echo chamber. So you have somebody in the field in the decision-making process on what the initiative should be. Do you feel like that would help, or is that something that doesn't have the effect?
I think that helps. I come from a background of diplomacy, so I'm a liberal artist. And we always said that good diplomacy is the art of letting other people have my way. And so finding those people that you know right off the bat are going to be super angry. The senior district engineer who's been here for 30 years, and every suggestion he says, nope, we're not doing it. Getting them involved early in the process and showing them the value and getting their early buy-in has a contagious effect on the rest of the organization.
And they actually can become your best spokesperson and your messengers, right? To carry the message forward.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to add to it. So for me, it's about getting my technical team to have more boots on the ground. They spend so much time in the office that they don't actually get out and listen. And if I can get my technical team to get their boots on, to get out in the field, to go have a chat with people, to actually see some of the things that they're trying to implement and talk through the frustrations that can sometimes come up, they can start to get their eyes open. But when we do it from like an office, when we do it from thousands of miles away and don't actually go and interact with the people using whatever it is that we're using, or have conversations even better beforehand about it and bring them in to test try, to work with it, to be like, okay, is this something that we should be using? What's wrong? And let them voice that and truly listen. I think we spend too much time telling people what to do and not enough time listening to people.